What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. This is TWA Motorsports, and today, yes, we are on the 6-liter. Remember a while back, I showed you guys some of the gifts I got for Christmas. I showed you that I got one of the 6-liters back. Now we have two of them out here actually, and we have the blown up Suburban motor back there still. But the plan here, guys, one 6-liter going in the 52 Chevy back there, another 6-liter going into the 55. So here's what we got. We've got the one for the 52 Chevy back there. At least that's what I'm planning on using this for. Gen 4 rods, new cam bearings, new pistons, Gen 4 pistons. Apparently you can't use a Gen 4 rod with a Gen 3 piston. So we did both. It is bored 20 over. Guys, it is a stock bottom end. I was not planning to put any boost or anything on the truck back there. However, I am going to be putting a pretty good size, well, I say pretty good size, a mid-size cam in this truck. 4L60 transmission with a small converter. Nothing crazy, guys. I'm not planning on boosting that truck. However, I am planning on boosting the 55 eventually. So that's why I'd rather do a forged engine in it. So I've got another one back there for my machine shop to build and us to do that. But today, you can see we've got it picked up and moved over here. I'm getting ready to put it on the engine stand. But before I do, I've got new gaskets for the rear of this thing. I want to put the rear main on or in before I do this. So I'm going to unwrap this thing. We're going to get the new rear main, which is, I think I've got one over there. And we are going to install it while we've got it off the engine stand. Obviously, doing this before we put on the engine stand makes life a lot easier. So let's go get the stuff. Let's get this bag kind of peeled back and we'll get started here. Now, before we go lining this up, because you guys know that the alignment of these are crucial, but it's, you know, to keep it from leaking. You don't want a rear main seal leak, and it's a good idea to replace them every time you have the chance. Honestly, if the transmission's out, you should replace one. I would. But we've got the cover, the original cover. I did not buy a new cover. I had him clean the old one. I also, obviously he's went through the block, cleaned the block up, but they painted it. And so guys, there's a little overspray here. I'm just gonna run over it with, I've got some brake clean there and a couple razor blades. We're gonna just clean this surface off, go over it a couple times, make sure that it's nice and clean. I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the inside of that before we even get started. Well, I've got both the surfaces cleaned off, and you'll notice that I've got this tool in here to center this. So guys, our concern is, you can see how much play this thing has up and down. So not only are we gonna have to do something here, but we're gonna have to put something on the bottom. Now, the tool that I have is actually meant for the front, but it also works in the back. So I can use that to press up against the block and get us lined up. Okay, so I can use it there, which is good. But I've also got a new gasket right there, so you can see, and then I've got my bolts. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this back apart and like that. We're gonna get the gasket in place, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and thread some of these bolts through not only the plate, but the gasket as well. That'll kind of keep them in place. Then we'll put that all back up in there, get it lined up, and start to cinch these things down. Before I put this tool in, I want to show you guys, check this out. Look how much movement this thing has all over the place. So you could see why you would potentially have a leak here if, you know, you didn't get your rear main in correctly. And I will say that this is a snug fit, but it's supposed to be. But now look, the only up and down we have is side to side. It's rocking back and forth, and that's why we need that plate on the bottom. But once we get that plate on the bottom, we can go ahead and start cinching these things down. And guys, these get torqued to 18 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna grab my little plate. We're gonna make sure that the bottom is square, make sure that this is in place, and it looks like a nice even gap all the way around, inside and outside. And we're good to tighten this thing down. Once we get it all lined up, torque down to 18 foot-pounds, then guys, you can gradually, it's gonna be a pain, but you can work this guy out. It'll come out, it just takes a little bit. And we can go ahead and use a mallet. I may have to use two hands because it's better if it comes out even. You can see I've kind of got a different, yeah, I'm gonna have to use two hands because we need to pull it out evenly that's the way it works the best. But if you flip this thing around, that is what drives in your new seal. So we've got a new rear main seal right here. Of course, GM parts, that's all I use, guys, unless for some reason I can't get one, but we'll get this snapped into place. And this does have an inner and an outer, says in the instructions, and then very small on here, I think it says outer. I'll try to show you that if I can get it close enough on camera. Now, I'm not real sure if you can see that, but it says this side out. It's very, very small on the rubber. So that guy goes up in here like so, straddling this. And I know what somebody's gonna say. They're gonna say, oh, you've got to use some sort of grease or oil to seat this. It is not. It is a dry install. That is how you put it in. So I'm gonna grab my tool here, flip it around. I've got a rubber mallet here in my hand, and we're gonna tap this thing into place. Got it in there, just tap nice and even, you know, like don't smash the top in and then try to smash the bottom in. Just try to go evenly around it. And then you wanna make sure that it's as flush as you can possibly get it. This little tool here will stop when you get to the point where you need to be, because it'll start to hit the metal here. And that's when you know you are home. And now, guys, we can go ahead, stick this thing on the engine stand and move on. The next thing we want to do, now that we got that accomplished, is, guys, we have the camshaft, and I'm going to go ahead and put this guy in place and hopefully button up some of the front of this. But this camshaft I actually bought for Cohen's Camaro back in the day, but when we had to put a new motor in it, well, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. So look, this camshaft is not really a big one for a 6-liter. I'll talk to you about the specs here. Got the cam card, but so it is a let's see here, 222 230 on duration, and then the lift is 599 on the intake and 600 on the exhaust, and this is on a 113 lobe separation. So it's not a massive cam, but I think it'll be great for what we're using it for, which is just, you know, like I said, we're going to put it in the 52 eventually, and yeah, I think it'll kind of have some lope to it. And it'll be good enough for what we're doing. It'll definitely have way more power than what's in that truck right now, which is nothing. Well, it's always a good idea. I just took this outside and sprayed it off with brake clean. A lot of times in the manufacturing process, even though they clean it, there's still like little pieces of metal in there, and you don't want that in your engine. So it's always a good idea. I spray it down both sides, flip it over, and do the same thing. And so now, guys, holy cow. Probably should have used a lint-free towel, but I've also got 2 bolts in the end. You can use water pump bolts to give us a little bit of extension while we're going in. But we need to lube this thing up and be pretty liberal with this. I may actually have Cohen squeeze this on, because I'm going to be, put it on each lobe. I need more here. And we'll get it started. There we go. Really focus on these areas. Once you get it started in there, it'll get a little easier because you're not holding this weight the whole time you're doing it. But so we'll get it started here. I'm gonna nick up those brand new cam bearings, you know. Okay, and there. Let's go on that, put quite a bit more on this one. We just work the cam back into place, and I use Melling as far as assembly lube. You guys can use whatever brand you choose. Put a little more on that one. Like I said, I use a lot of it, so you may need, generally a bottle will last me a couple cam installs. Now we're going to go back another lobe. Okay. This one, that first one. So we're gonna work our way all the way back, and then we will grab some parts to hopefully lock this cam into place. Now that we got the cam in, we need to put the cam retainer plate in. Now I always opt to buy a new one when I do this. Now I've cleaned this once, and I know they've cleaned it, but it doesn't hurt to clean it again. If you put a bad cam, like if you put one in that has a bad gasket on it, your oil pressure will suck. So don't do that. I buy new bolts because the old style cam retainer is discontinued. So you'll notice, like the ones we took out, this is the new style, and you'll know it's the new style because it has recessed holes. The old style does not, it's flat there. Now, you cannot use this with the old bolts. You have to go to the new bolts, which I hate because they're Torx. It's a T40, but you can buy them new, and when you buy them new, they come with thread locker already on them, okay? So we're gonna put this into place, get this started. I'm gonna give you a little grief because there is thread locker on these guys. But here's the important thing. Do not over tighten these. I wanna say they're 18 foot-pounds. I'm gonna double check that. But the biggest issue, guys, is if you over tighten it, you will crack the plate. And so I like to run them down by hand to get the plate where it needs to be, because it has some movement, you can see. If you run it down by hand, it'll kind of self-center, because these Torx are made to fit this, so they're beveled on the inside to match that bevel on the cam position plate, or the cam plate, I mean, retainer plate. So let's get these ran down. I'll make sure these torque specs that I just gave you are correct. Here's why you double check. 18 was the old ones. That's why I was thinking that. That's the hex head. This is 11. So I like to do alternating passes. There's 11, 11, 11. All right, let's move on. Now with that in place, we need to roll the engine over. You can see we're at top dead center on number 1, but our little dot on our crank, I put an old bolt in, by the way, spun it around, we got the dot facing up. That's what we want. Now, I bought a new GM timing chain. This is just an LS2, LS3 timing chain. We'll just leave it there for now. I also bought some ARP bolts, and I bought a new timing gear. So this guy right here is gonna set in like so. Now what we need to do is, at the same time we're lining up this bottom dot, this dot right here needs to face down, okay? These two dots, these two teeth need to point each other. That's very, very important. I do not degree my cams, so it's not that imperative to me, but what I will do is, once I get these out of the package and put this up here, we may have to move the timing chain 1 degree at a time. Now these older motors don't have a timing tensioner like the newer ones do, so we don't have to worry about that, but we do need to make sure that these go dot to dot. And so what I do, once I get it hooked up, I'll roll the motor around and make sure that they're hitting at the same time. So the first revolution, you'll get back to center at the top dot, I believe, or no, the bottom one. The top one will be facing straight up, and then they should, on the second rotation, meet each other again. Very important. I'll show you once we get it all kind of in place. Let's see if we can get it lined up here. I'm gonna go back and put some, now ARP does not say to put thread locker on their cam, or on their cam bolts, but I'm going to. Don't care what it says. If we can get this somewhat lined up. This will be the hardest part that you guys do, and believe me, doing this outside of the car is 1,000 times easier than doing it in the car. Let's put it that way. My cam fell back in there. Perfect. I'm a off, I need to go 1 tooth over. So we're gonna work it 1 tooth over. The cam moved a little bit. Holy cow, I went the wrong way. So now I need to go up the way. Need to go one more. Bingo. Alright. Now I just need my cam to come down just a hair. We're going to start a couple of these, see if we can drag that cam forward. We'll test it. What I do is we'll pull the cam. The cam likes to slide back in the engine. So once we get it kind of pulled up in here, we'll check our dots. Roll it around like I said, and I'll bring you in closer to show you what I'm talking about. And then what we'll do is we'll look at how much tension that thing has, or play. That's why they went to a timing chain tensioner in the newer models. I'm going to snug these down a little bit by hand, just with a 10mm, and then like I said, we'll roll it around and I'll bring you in close. So I've got Cohen getting ready to spin it, but you can see we're dot to dot. Now he's going to rotate it until the top dot, or the bottom dot, comes around for the second time. And you'll see when that happens, the top pulley, the dot will be at the top. Okay, see when that tooth and that tooth line up. Go ahead, a little more. Oh, went too far. But you get the idea. So this one's at the top now. That one's kind of at the top. Roll it back same way, and we're going to make sure that when he comes back around, those two teeth are pointing at each other. Almost there, a little bit more, and they are. Okay, so that's how we know that we're good. Go just a hair more, barely. There you go. So see how after a couple revolutions we're lined up still? Now, I don't love the tension in these, but there's nothing you can do on these older LS motors unless you drill the block and put like the dog bone style in. Now, ARP calls for 25 foot-pounds on these, so what I'm gonna do, we're gonna run one out. I'm gonna put some blue Loctite on it, even though, like I said, ARP does not call for this. If you've ever had one of these back out, which luckily I haven't, but I've also put Loctite on them every single time I put one together, and I'm not putting a lot on there. We'll run it back down. Okay, we'll do that to each one, and then we'll go back and torque them to 25 foot-pounds. It's all torqued up, and I think we're ready to grab the oil pump. I'm hoping we're not doing this for nothing, but I got a Melling Oil Pump. I think it's a 296 or a 295, I can't remember. 296, right there on the box. Okay, so the oil pump, guys, I like to line this up, so I'll show you the process, but normally I would want to put my pickup tube on at the same time. However, because I'm test fitting this motor in the 55 with a different oil pan, the pickup tube that I'm actually going to be using on this won't fit that oil pan. So I want to put this on, but at the same time I may have to take it back off. Hopefully not, but I think we should be able to slide over this. And this is keyed, so it should eventually line up. Sometimes it fights you. There we go. And so once you get that in place, we're gonna go ahead, Cohen's got the bolts here, we're gonna go ahead and just snug it down, okay? But I want you to notice something when I get it somewhat snug. I'm also gonna be probably using a little Loctite on these as well. But when I get this thing snug, it still has, look at that play. okay? And it has some up and down play as well. So what we're trying to do is we want to center these gears inside of here. And look, I've done this both ways. This is relatively new, me starting to do this method, but it just makes me feel a little better if we use feeler gauges and make sure that things square. I even did it on the 5.3 that we put in the Suburban not long ago. You guys remember that? I took this apart, just like I'm gonna do here in a minute. So, I'll get them snug, and then I'm gonna back these off. I believe they're a T30 or a T40. They're actually a T30. One other thing, guys, is this comes with a different spring if you want more pressure or whatnot. This is like an upgraded volume, I believe. Pressure generally isn't a problem. All right, I'm gonna grab my feeler gauges. I'm gonna kind of show you what we're doing here, and I don't know, maybe it's for nothing, but I like to do it. So you notice I only have 2 feeler gauges in here right now, but we've got a 0.0015 or a 0.04 millimeter. And so what he's doing, he's got one on the top there. I'm putting one in this side, and then I need to put one more, which is a little easier said than done, but I've got one more set of these that I'm gonna put in the other side, back here where his hand's at. And once we have that, then we'll know that that pump, those timing gears are centered. And like I said, guys, this may be overkill for what you're doing, but it sure makes me feel a lot better. It gives me a little bit of peace of mind. I'm gonna have to loosen this thing up a little. One in all 3 corners is what we're working on here. Cohen's holding a couple. We need to torque these to 18 foot-pounds. Now, you'll notice this isn't my torque wrench, but once I get them snug, I want to pull them back out and do a little bit of Loctite anyway. Okay, maybe get in between there. And then we can pull our feeler gauges out, and we know it's square. So we're set now. I'm gonna back each one of these out one at a time, then I'm gonna re-torque them. So I'm gonna take this one out, put a little Loctite on it, just some blue Loctite, torque it to 18, pull this one out, torque it to 18, pull this one out, torque it to 18, pull this one out. Does that make sense? It's not gonna move because we've got 3 holding it in place. Now that we got all those torqued, guys, not a bad idea to put either oil or assembly lube in here. Just for some added lubrication when we first start this thing up. You don't have to. I've done it both ways. Now we need to put our plate back on, and so we got our torques. These go to about 9 foot-pounds. Just dropped one. That's great. And so we'll get these back in and torque them down with a 30 to about 9 foot-pounds. Not a lot here. It didn't. I don't know if you guys noticed, but it didn't take a lot to take these things off. In similar situation as the cam retainer, they're beveled, so snug it down by hand. That way you get it nice and centered, kind of work your way around, and then alternate back and forth when you're torquing. At this point, we're moving on to the next step, which is our lifters. Now, anytime, guys, you do a LS motor, I recommend getting new lifter trays, and I generally only buy GM ones. I'll list this in the description down below. But I've chosen, instead of like in the Trans Am, we went with the Johnson lifter. It is a better lifter, but this is kind of a budget-ish build, and so I didn't want to buy the cheapy run-of-the-mill lifters, so I chose to go with just a stock LS7. That would be what was in Cohen's car stock. The LS3s, the LS7s, the LS9, all got this lifter. Now I've got them setting in oil. They came individually wrapped. They came in a box. I'll list these in the description as well. But what we need to do is, there's no good way of doing this without making a mess, but I'm gonna start yanking these things out of here. And as we're doing that, we're gonna put them in the lifter cups or lifter trays. Guys, look, there's only one direction these things go in. They can only fit one way, okay? So don't force them. The square end goes to the square end. It's that simple, okay? And then once we get these into place, and it's gonna be a mess. That is for sure. But once we get them in place, then we'll stick our lifter tray in here. I think it's this way, yeah. All right. And don't fight it, just kind of wiggle it back and forth. It'll work its way in. There we go. All right, that one's set. Now we're gonna move on. I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of these off camera. It's a mess, that is for sure. And then we will grab our bolts and get this thing bolted in and torqued down. Once we get all these in like I've got, just make sure that they're, the bolt hole's is pretty much centered. We're using the stock bolts and they go to 108 inch-pounds. That's not very much. There we go. Now we are ready. Got some head gaskets over here. I'm gonna go grab those. And our head, little inserts that go in the bottom of the head, we'll get those. And I've got a set of LS6 heads that are just stock. I mean, they've got an aftermarket set of springs on them to handle this cam. But other than that, they're just cleaned up, no port work, nothing crazy. It should, though, drop the compression, or I'm sorry, up the compression on this motor a little bit, because I think the stock LS6 heads are like a 64, 65 cc, whereas the stock 317 heads are like 71 cc. So we should gain a little bit on that with the cam. Like I said, we're not building a race car here, but let me go grab the head gaskets. I'm gonna clean this mating surface off real quick, open a head gasket, and that's our next step. The machine shop cleans this up really well. If you guys remember, I actually cleaned this up pretty good. Scraped it all and whatnot. And the good thing about it is I talked to him a while ago actually, and I said, hey, do you clean the bolt holes? And he said, yeah, we run all the bolt holes, so I shouldn't have to do anything there. But I may go over this a couple times just to make sure. There's a little bit of paint. They sprayed the block for me. Get all the paint off where the head's gonna set. You don't want it to have any issues adhering. And then we'll grab the head gasket. I'm not sure why I couldn't think of the name of these. These are dowels. Anyway, these kind of align the head, and so what I like to do is get them started and pop them in with like a rubber hammer. That way you're not messing them up. I'm gonna wipe it down one more time. And we're gonna grab the head gasket. Now we've got the head gaskets, and guys, they only go in one way as well. You'll see that you have front, and obviously the front can only go towards the front. Line up our little dowels here, and there's that. I've wiped that off a couple times. Now what I want to do is I want to grab my head, but I need to clean it off. I haven't done that yet. We're going to put it in place. Now we've got our new head, or new to me head. We're going to put that on those dowels. Rock that thing into place. You can see, like I said, it's got aftermarket springs on it. Guys, it also has different valves in it. But now I've got a set of ARP head bolts. Okay, not studs, but head bolts that we need to open up and get started on this. I decided to go with ARPs because they're reusable. if I ever had an issue, like a lifter fail, I could take them out and reuse them. And they're just a little tougher than the factory. And honestly, guys, they're not a ton more expensive than the factory. I'll list these below as well. This is for the Gen 3 block. Even though we have Gen 4 internals, the Gen 3 block has shorter holes here in 2 spots, right here and in the back. And so you got to make sure that you get the right ones. The Gen 4 had a full length bolt for that spot. Now these upper bolts, I generally don't put any product on. Okay, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'm not going to on these. There is a bevel on one side of the washer though. That bevel points towards the head of the bolt. And then once you do that, then you can go ahead and start threading that in. Now, I'm just using this to make sure this head's kind of wants to move a little bit. I'm just putting it in there to make sure these top lines, make sure we don't move around. But then I'll show you the difference between the long one, the short one that goes here and the long one that goes down below. Now here's the difference, pretty good size difference here between lower and the front. So you should have 4 of these, 2 for each side on the outers of the top or the inside of the head. All right, when we're looking at these, this piece that looks like this, see how it's got that in it? That goes away from the head. Same thing, bevel goes towards the head. The other thing, guys, is on this, we need to put a little bit of ARP, like their assembly lube. We'll put a little bit on the threads and a little bit up here on the head of the bolt. We do not want any on the mating surface though. Now what you'll notice that I'm doing now is obviously we're putting them all in, but I'm snugging them down. I'm putting them in the order the ARP and actually GM prefer. So 1, and I'm just running it down with my impact lightly, my little 1/4 inch impact. So not even stripping it, or you know how they break away. I'm just running it down snug, okay? And I'm following this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Remember your shorter ones inside the head on the outer. Now, following this diagram, we're going to torque. These are 13mm hex head. We're going to start in the middle, number 1, and we're going to torque it to 25 foot-pounds. There's 1. Two. Just follow the torque sequence and the desired torque. This probably isn't as important as, like, I would always do it this way, but I know some people just run it down with an impact and then kind of go back and torque it later. Look, there's a reason they send instruction with it, but it's probably not as big a deal since we're not running any boost, you know. Oh, I didn't run that one down with the impact. Let's do that so I don't have to wrench forever. Nothing worse than swinging this thing around that many times to get it torqued. All right, now that we have that, we need to move up to 50, and we need to duplicate that exact same thing, followed by 80, and then we need to go across the top at 25. Generally what I do is I'll do like the next step at 50, and then I'll go ahead and do 25 on these, and then I'll do 80, and then I'll do these 25 again. Now I've got the 2. The last step is 80 foot-pounds, and guys, look, this thing's gonna wanna walk around on you, so you're gonna kinda have to leverage it with your foot. 80 foot-pounds is quite a bit when you're, you know, just a one-man operation trying to hold this. So you may have to wedge your foot up against it like this, and then go down to the 80. It's quite a bit. Following the same pattern we did originally. go back and do 25. Starting in the middle. And working our way out up top on those little guys. So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That thing is torqued down. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock the other one out off camera, guys. It is normal to see oil underneath if you don't have an oil pan on. That's because, you know, what we soak the lifters in is starting to drain down into the motor. That is not a problem. Just make sure, you know, like I said, I'm cleaning up the deck surface really well before putting the head gasket on, and then obviously the side of the head, you can see I've got a little bit of oil, residual oil, so I need to wipe all that down, get it good and clean, slap the head gasket on, and duplicate what we just did on the other side. Well, I know you guys can hear the rain hitting outside. We're actually getting some freezing rain right now, but the temperature in the shop seems good. I think we're gonna stop right here, guys. We got the other head assembled with the ARP head bolts. Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of it accomplished, or at least put together. Now, why did I not put the front cover on? Well, because I really want to do that after I put the oil pan on. And so I don't want to put the oil pan on yet, even though I have it over there, it's sitting on the bottom shelf. The oil pan that fits the 52 is actually an F-body oil pan, which is what I'm going to be using. That's what's over there. The F-body oil pan, however, will not fit the 55. And so I'm waiting for the oil pan to get in. So in the next video, guys, it'll be on the 55. When you see this motor again, we're going to put that oil pan on it, test fit everything, probably temporarily put the oil pan on and the front cover with no gaskets because they're going to be coming back off. And then we'll hook up like windage tray, oil pump pickup tube, all that stuff. But I'm using this as a clean test motor to get the clearances on the 55 for the firewall with the head, the oil pan, where everything sets. So that's kind of why I wanted to get this thing assembled. And I hate having it apart. I'll probably go back and tape up these areas. I'm going to put an engine bag on it. But yeah, we've got some more parts to put on it, which will be coming in the later days. But yeah, I think it's going to make a pretty good motor for the 52 pickup. Bigger cam, a little better compression, Gen 4 rod, so a little stronger, some nicer parts, better oil pump. It should be pretty good. I honestly, guys, if I had to guess a rear wheel horsepower number, I think this thing will make 400 at the crank, no problem. So probably 375-ish to the wheel, behind a 4L60. That's what I'm gonna be using, and a small like 3200 stall. It'll light the tires up. Believe me, it'll blow the tires off of the 52 pickup. That is for sure. I would love to have another one of these for like my green truck, maybe a little nicer stuff. But these are just like I said, a set of cleaned up take off 243 heads. With a 600 lift spring on them, new stainless valves, so nothing spectacular, no port work or anything. But anyway, hopefully you guys are enjoying the progress on this. Look, I'm looking forward to getting that oil pan and test fitting that thing in the 55 so we can plop it right back out, get that oil pan off, get the one that's going to stay on it on, finish assembling this motor, and then start test fitting in the 52 pickup. So that's the plan anyway. Hopefully, like I said, you guys are enjoying this. If you are, go down and hit that thumbs up button. Guys, while you're down there doing that, hit the subscribe button. Of course, ring that bell notification that notifies you every single time we drop a new video. And stay tuned to see this thing come back in a couple different vehicles.